Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. Well, actually we're not in the war room. I'm going to take you there in a few minutes. I just want to talk about the rule books first. This is going to be another in my series of Know the Rules and Use the Rules to Your Advantage. And the rule that I'm going to show you today is how you can gain an extra 5 IPCs as the Germans through a national objective. It's kind of sneaky, kind of like the last couple that I showed you, but it's well within the rules. But first I want to show you the rule books, and there's a reason for that. We were debating this rule. One of the longtime users on AxisAndAllies.org there had asked a question about this rule and whether or not it was legal, and I got into a debate with some of the people on there, as we often do when somebody asks for a rules interpretation. And so it turned into a bit of a mystery for me, though, because it seemed to me that we were talking about two different things, because I was reading from my rule book and they must have been reading from their rule books, and they didn't seem to line up. And I'll take a look at these rule books here. There's the Pacific second edition rule book and the Europe second edition rule book. Now, what confused me was that the wording in the Pacific rule book and the wording in the Europe rule book were different. And I'm not talking about the rules that regard just the Pacific game or just the Europe game. When I look for rules on political situations, like in this case with this rule we're going to talk about, I look in the global rules section near the back. But they were different. They were both different from each other. When it stated the rule, and the way I was going by was from the Pacific rule book. And when I go to find a rule, like I have my two rule books laying around all the time, and I just go and I grab one of them because it should be the same, right? But I found out just a few minutes ago as I received a private message on AxisAndAllies.org from one of our new moderators, Panther. Panther's a great moderator. He and Whitman just got the job as moderators on AxisAndAllies.org, and I'm sure they're both going to do a great job. But Panther has always gotten involved with helping to interpret the rules, and he's just about always spot on when it comes to the rule books. And anyway, he sent me a private message this morning and asked me to point out, and that's where I seen that like he had posted a link to me, and his stating of the Europe rules were different than mine. And so I said that to him, and then he got back to me and said, "Oh, didn't you know they came out with new ones?" And the reason that my books are different is because although I bought the games on the same day, I had not knowing that there was a first edition and a second edition. This was 5 years ago. I bought the first edition Pacific book or game and the second edition Europe game. So when I joined the online community and started to learn more about the game and realized, I've got an old Pacific game, in one of my orders from Historical Board Gaming, I ordered a new Pacific rule book. And of course, I got some Anzac infantry and some Anzac and Japan anti-aircraft guns, because they weren't in the first edition Pacific, or the infantry were for Anzac. But let's face it, those ones were pretty generic. Those guys with the cowboy hats are way cooler, the Anzac infantry. But anyway, so the Pacific rulebook is correct, but the Europe rulebook is not, because I bought this one 5 years ago. They have since come out with changes, and so the rule books that they put out now, and that this one was a recent purchase, the rules are different now, slightly different. I mean, they're not vastly different. And let me just show you what I mean here, because Panther was kind enough to send me a link. He's always very helpful with those kind of things. So here we're looking at AxisAndAllies.org, and you can see here. I'll just try to highlight this here. So we're in the Axis and Allies boards here, where I'm highlighting red. And it's the Global 1940 section and the Global second edition frequently asked questions. And if you scroll down a ways, you will get to here, starting here, a ways down the page, and it's these are updates to the rules. So you can see, you can see in red there, And I'm just going to scroll fast. You can go there if you want to see any particular rules. So those are all the updates to the rules that you wouldn't have if you had an older rule book like mine. Even though it's a second edition rule book, there's been changes or clarifications made to the rule books, and that's why my rule book was different than the other one. And here I'm going to show you what it said here. I'll show you what I mean. So let's just go back here, and here, this is what the rule should say. Let's go to the Pacific book first. So under the Soviet Union here, I'll try to hold this steady. If you're reading this on your, or watching this video on your phone, you might not be able to see it, but if you're on a computer, you should be able to see it. So this is where I was looking here, and this is where my confusion came from. It says, however, the Soviet Union is still restricted on the Europe map, and Germany and Italy must treat the entire Soviet Union as a neutral power, and may not move units into or through any original Soviet territories or Soviet-controlled territories. Now this is where I got confused, where it said original Soviet territories. That means territories that have the Soviet roundel on them, that it started at the beginning of the game. See, they didn't need to put that in there. If they had just put Soviet-controlled territories in there, then that would have sufficed, because if Russia had lost a territory, then, or if Russia was still neutral, then it would not have lost any territories. So you didn't need to put original territories. But originally controlled means that that was a territory that they had at the beginning of the game, and it says there that Germany and Italy must not move into them. But where Panther pointed out was that why they could do it was because the entire Soviet Union as a neutral power. That's the key point right there, is neutral power. Soviet Union is not neutral on the Europe side of the board anymore. They are still neutral with Germany, but they're not neutral with Italy. So they're not a neutral power anymore on the Europe side of the board, and that's important. So look over here. And I'll just leave the camera here. I'm not going to read everything it says, but this is what it says in the old book. There's nowhere in there that it says original controlled or original territory. It doesn't say that anywhere in there in this book. And this is the older one. This is the Europe book that I have. So these are things that you need to be careful of when you're looking through the rules. You need to make sure that your rule book is current, and you need to, more than anything, you need to interpret them properly, and you need to read every rule in them. Like me, I was reading. I was keying on where it said original, whereas I should have been. They didn't need to write that word in there, but I needed to know neutral power. And that's important for this rule, because what we're going to be talking about here, let's just go to the war room right now. Take you in there. So what we're talking about today, and how you can gain some extra IPCs. Let's just move some of this crap out of the way. Is Eastern Poland. Now, hang on a second. I'm just going to pause the video for a minute, and I'll be right back. Okay, so getting to Ichabod's question in Axis and Allies forums, he was wondering if Italy could take a tank. Let's take this one over here. This is the one on northern Italy. And on the first turn, it goes 2 spaces. Let's say it goes to Slovakia, Hungary here. Okay, so that's where the Italian tank is now. And, Germany has taken their turn and Russia's taken their turn. Now, a lot of people, they just move their Russian units back because they know that the other guys are going to get first shot against them. So let's just move those back, because I assume that's probably what happened. Now, I don't know if he used this tank. He might have used the one that's down here in the Balkans. I'm not sure. But his question was, if this tank were to come here on the second turn and take that, let's just get an Italian roundel. Could then Germany on the third turn move in a bunch of units, and I think he said 5. So let's just grab a couple more chips here. He was wondering, could Germany non-combat move in 5 infantry without declaring war on the Soviet Union, and would they still be neutral with the Soviet Union? And so this is where I was stumped on this question, because this is an originally controlled territory, and that's why I say they shouldn't have put originally controlled on it. But what the rule says now, or what it means now, is that Soviet Union is no longer a neutral power because the Italians have attacked it, and so therefore they're not they're still neutral with Italy, but they are at war with Italy, or sorry, they're at war with Italy. They're still neutral with Germany. That's what I meant to say. Okay, so Germany moves in there. So why would they do that? Why would they go in there on the third turn without declaring war on the Soviets? And bear in mind, I'm not recommending that you do this, because in every case, this might not be a good idea. It might be a better idea for Germany to attack Russia before that. I think maybe that why you might be doing this would be if you were setting up a sea lion attack, and perhaps you went to Scotland first, because if you took out London this turn on the third turn, then Russia would be at war, or you would be at war with Russia, so you wouldn't be able to collect. But they're the national objective. What you can do here anyway is there's a national objective in here. It's 5 IPCs representing wheat and oil from the Soviet Union, and that is when Germany is not at war with the Soviet Union. And here you can see this one better. This is Sired Blood's card, so you can see 5 if Germany is not at war with the Soviet Union. So that's why you would do that. That's why Germany would move there on a non-combat move without declaring war, so they can get that extra 5 IPCs. Now you might think that's a great idea, but can you make more money by attacking a bunch of stuff, or should you wait that long? Because the longer you wait, the stronger Russia is going to get. So depending on what's going on in the game, it may or may not be a good idea. Certainly, if you weren't planning on attacking Russia yet, if Germany is not ready to go to war with Russia yet, then it's a great idea. You can get that extra 5 IPCs. But then after Germany finishes its turn, and we're talking about the third turn here, now that Russia is not a neutral power, now Russia is allowed to declare war on Germany. So Russia on the third turn will declare, and you do want to declare war. You don't want to just say, well, screw it, I'll just sit here and leave things the way they are, because all of your national objectives here, all of the national objectives that the Russians have, it means that you have to be at war in Europe. You can't collect any of these, the 5 IPCs, the 3 IPCs, and the 10 IPCs. That's one for later in the game if you manage to get Berlin. But none of these national objectives are available to you until you are at war. So you want to be at war. But Germany, there's one that they can collect when they're not at war. And so that's why they've chosen to do this. And apparently that's legal. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention is that when we have these debates on AxisAndAllies.org, there is a rules deputy. His name is Krieghund. And he was the one, remember a couple minutes ago I showed you where the rules had been updated. Those were posts that he made. And if you post a question in that frequently asked questions, he will eventually come on there and give you the correct interpretation. Other people might give you their opinion, and if they are able to cite a place where he had said this is what the rule is, then you can take that as a rule. Sometimes some of the rules in here can be written a little ambiguously. Like if you really read hard and you debated it and everything, you can come to a consensus and you can figure it out. But if you're just reading it, some of it, like me, when I was confused by when it said original Soviet territories there, You know, like that can lead to a bit of confusion. But if you ask a question in there and Krieg Hunt gets back to you and he says this is what the rule is, then that is what the rule is. There's no more debate. That is he is I think he's the guy that wrote the rule book. Actually, I'm not sure. I think I read that somewhere. But he is an official rules deputy. So even if a situation comes along that nobody has ever asked about, and the creator and of the game and his deputies have never thought about, then he will make a ruling. He will say this is how this rule will be interpreted, and that's if you're going to play the game by the rules, then that is the rule that you have to follow, whatever he says. So that's why it's great to be a member of accessandallies.org. And when we were debating this yesterday, one of the people on there, I think it was Variance, he pointed to another website. He posted a link to another website, Harris Games Design, which is Larry Harris's official site for Axis and Allies. He posted a link to that site where Krieg Hunt had stated that this exact situation here, that was legal to do, that Germany could remain neutral with Russia and collect that 5 IPCs. So once I seen that, I knew, okay, that's the rule. Like there's some rules that I think are just goofy, and I think that we all have those feelings about this game. There's so many rules in this game that, I mean, there's got to be a couple that you think are just silly, right? And that holds true. I don't think this one is as bad as some of the ones. Like some of them are just goofier than hell. But you know, once that guy interprets a rule and says this is the rule, well, then that's, you know, it doesn't matter what your opinion is. That's the rule. If you want to play by the rules, you have to play by that rule. And so that's great to be a member of accessandallies.org and to be able to ask those questions and have those rules interpreted for you. But anyway, for the purposes of this video, now, whoop, sorry about that, almost dropped you. Now that you know, you are allowed, let's get some from the Moscow perspective here. The camera's sitting right over top of Moscow. So let's just go through that again. Russia comes in here on the second turn on the Italians come in here on the Italian second turn and takes that out. They get the 1 IPC for that. Germany on the third turn, non-combat move in there, does not declare war on the Soviet Union. They non-combat move in there, and they're able to collect 5 IPCs for not being at war with the Soviet Union. Doesn't matter what you think of it, that is the rule. So, know the rules. Use the rules to your advantage. This is General Hand Grenade. Thanks, everyone. Bye.